One more game left in the best ball regular season. You spent months and months drafting these teams. Maybe you're live to win a bunch of money. Maybe you're like me and you're not live to win any real money. But either way, we're here to get ready for the finals. The final game, Bills Bengals, the game everybody has been waiting for, the game of the regular season, and it closes out the best ball season. It's going to decide millions and millions of dollars, and we're going to figure out who you might need to have, who maybe one of our friends is fading, everyone in this game, and what you might be able to get tonight to take home all the big bucks in best ball. Well, I had hoped to show up to this show. We were supposed to have this show yesterday, but shout out to our good friend, Patrick Carrain, who clearly no one else needed to be live sweating last night's game or the end of yesterday's games quite like Pat. So we let them have that one because we didn't need to be having me recap my teams that are all in the bottom 10% of all of these best ball finals. It was not a good week for me. My best team is really not very good, but it is in eighth in the $9 button hook.
Of course it is.
Which is, yeah, exactly. My one team, and of course it's a Mahomes-Kelsey team that doesn't have McKinnon, and Kelsey was awful anyway. But nothing, I can't win anything worthwhile on that team. And my two teams that I thought were pretty damn good coming into the week just were horrible, absolutely horrible. I'm going to finish very near the bottom of both tournaments. But I don't know how you did. Probably not a whole lot better if I remember all the players on your team. You were sweating, but I think it's kind of a fascinating, not lesson necessarily, but reminder of how absurd this game is, right? Like Mike Evans is the guy you need and was one of the worst picks. We joked about Cam Akers, right? And all these guys. Mike Evans might have actually been the assuming health, right? If we take out the injured guys, at least early round players, Mike Evans was probably one of the worst picks for the regular season, but everybody, not in BBM, I guess, but in most tournaments, there's a Mike Evans team up top. So it's a stark reminder that this game is crazy.
Well, the guy that's in first in the puppy right now, the first puppy, that's the tournament I'm in. Mm-hmm. He has Mike Evans. He has the nuts. This is my fear. He'd be crushing BBM right now. He's up 20 points on Carrain's team or something like that.
Jeez.
And he has 187 or something close to that. And he's the only Mike Evans team. There might be one more. And it's he's going to win $75,000. But you put that team up and you're I could have won $2 million with this team. That's, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. It's a tough spot to be in. I mean, you're getting $75,000, right? So I guess it's not the worst, but yeah, my teams are relatively dead with the exception of Devin Singletary does something nuclear. I can win a little over 1,000 on that puppy team. I'm right in the middle there. Good thing I did research last night though, because as I dug through all of the Spike Week streams, all of the ship chasing streams, I was able to find the draft that Pat Carrain did to have this BBM team, and he did that draft with me, and I posted it on Twitter. So it seems as though I have a sweat at $2 million today is the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, that's I noticed I peeked in for just a few minutes on this. I love Pat. I wanted to tune in a little bit and watch him be miserable for a little bit on their stream last night. Mm-hmm. But and so I was still pretty tilted from the day of football and how it all played out. We were just gonna hang out and watch some TV and stuff and be done with it for a day because I knew we'd bounce back today. And Pete and Ben and others were pulling that joke quite quite a lot as well. So you're in, I don't know if that's good or bad company, but the people are coming for Pat's money here. The guy hasn't even won the 2 million yet, and everybody's coming for their share of it.
I'm just saying that I found the stream where we drafted. I have
There's
video evidence.
there's proof.
There's proof. So I've already hired lawyers, is what I'm going to say.
I will say, it's two totally unrelated things, but with Pat's sweat. For anyone that doesn't know, I assume if you're watching this, you probably know Pat Crane, who's on Chip Chasing and works for Roto World, NBC Sports, is in first in Best Ball Mania 3, currently winning $2 million, has no players left, had no players left last night, survived that one for the most part, and is now sweating one of the best and highest potential scoring games of the entire regular season, and has to fade all of these guys. If you're hanging out later, shout out to Hacker. I see him in the chat. He had a good comment that I wanted to piggyback on this conversation or this point that I'm making. I'm going to hop on Chip Chasing for a little bit and just enjoy the sweat with Pat, but also talk through, because Hacker put together kind of all the scenarios, all the teams that can realistically, right? If you need 70 Devin Singletary points, your team doesn't get on the list of teams that can actually catch him.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm going to walk through some of those scenarios I don't know if it's going to ease Pat's pain, because there's a few that I would not feel very excited about if
there's
I were.
A few that were scary.
Yeah, there's a few that are really, really scary. But Hacker's point, I just wanted to bring up real fast, because he said it's crazy there are so many live teams without Evans. What if you don't need the guy you need, right? And it is a fascinating thing, thought experiment, in that Mike Evans was 2% owned in Best Ball Mania 3. Now, generally, even a 2% owned guy, like in the DraftKings Millie with 1,000 teams, there's probably going to, and the whole top 5 is Mike Evans, or the top 9 or something like that is Mike Evans on DraftKings, and he put up 50 on DraftKings. So that's a really tough fade, right? He scored 25% of the top team's points. My Millie team has 94 points. I barely beat Mike Evans. Tom Brady and Mike Evans basically beat me on DraftKings. But the smaller the field, right? This goes back to our contest selection stuff that we talked about. It's twofold. Of course, I'm still going to max BBM next year. I'm still going to max the DraftKings Millie, because it's really not that much money to chase, life-changing money. But your thing about the puppy and Hacker's comment was yes, of course, you're not that guy put up a monster score, has Evans, but it's easier to just blow away the field. If you find, right, last year's Jamar Chase, 2 years ago, Alvin Kamara, this year's Mike Evans, especially at low ownership. Chase wasn't that low owned, but Kamara was, and Evans was this year. If you're in the smaller field, you can just, right, that you find Mike Evans, you don't need a lot more. You don't need a lot more in the small fields, especially on DraftKings, where we got into these 10-man finals, 12-man finals, 20-man finals. And so it just made me think about kind of contest selection a little bit more. Like I said, I want to chase the life-changing money, so I'm not going to stop playing those. But am I going to max the puppy 7 next year? Probably not. I think I want to. It just reminded me that especially on the contest that you're in, you might be able to win without the guy that you need. Or the inverse is also true. If you find the guy you need in a smaller field, you may need a lot less, right? In BBM, you still need a lot of juice around Mike Evans, but in the big dog, or right, the high stakes DraftKings tournament, you may not need a ton around Mike Evans if you just so happen to get him there. You know what I mean? And so it just had me thinking kind of about, obviously my teams are dust, so I'm already starting to think about next year and all that. And Hacker's comment reminded me of that.
Well, let me ask you this while we're on this subject. We talk about our structures that we like falling into player traps, in the sense of when we like to draft a certain structure, we tend to like certain guys. So especially for us in that range, when we're drafting our 0 RB teams and stuff, Evans, along with most of our peers, let's be real, they weren't looking at Evans. They were taking AJ Brown. They were taking T Higgins. They were taking, Tyreek Hill and all that stuff. And people went out of their way to say how much they didn't like Mike Evans. Now, when we don't like a guy that much, for people that are drafting like a specific type of structure, is that a guy in the future, and this could be results oriented for this year, should we be mixing Mike Evans in more? Because it's like, all right, well, we know that the people that are drafting these type of teams, Mike Evans isn't on their player list. If we're mixing Mike Evans into these hero RB teams or these zero RB teams, we're getting different from the rest of our pairs. We're drafting Mike Evans in a structure that we believe is going to advance more, gives us a better shot at winning. And now, all of a sudden we're unique because we're the one team that was doing it with Mike Evans. And I guess like finding that line of which players to do that with and not do that with, because the flip side is Allen Robinson, because no one wanted Allen Robinson either. And we were right on that one. So the difference, I think, is we knew Mike Evans was possible of nuclear games. Like that range was always there. Like if someone was going to tell you that he wasn't capable of three touchdowns in a game previous to the season, don't listen to that person anymore. Correct. Because Mike Evans has that upside. We knew it more than Godwin. Like we like Godwin better as a player because he just gets more volume and blah, 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 blah. But in a one game slate, Evans is greater than Godwin in theory. Right.
Evans did the thing that Jamar Chase did against the Chiefs last year. And he's not Jamar. I'm not trying to compare him as a football player, but the role that he plays is essentially a down the field outside boundary wide receiver, right? All year. The part of the reason why he's busted all year is because he's dropped like 2 or 3, like literally wide open drop 70-yard touchdowns. And Brady has been really bad actually connecting with him down the field. It really hasn't been for a total lack of opportunity, but that's the point. Is he wasn't, right? Like you said, I love Chris Godwin's like arguably my favorite player in the NFL. He's a really good football player, but like Keenan Allen's a really good football player too. I don't draft Keenan Allen, and I'm not comparing Godwin to Keenan Allen, but they're different archetypes of players, right? It's like the rookie comparing Wandale, right, to Pickens, right? They're both pretty good football players. It's just Pickens really just gets a bunch of downfield shots, and you pray to God he makes crazy catches, and Wandale gets a bunch of 2-yard targets. They're just different archetypes of players. And so my takeaway, I've thought about this a lot, and I feel I was on the right path throughout the course of the offseason, but didn't quite get all the way there to where I need to be. And this might be my number one biggest lesson from the whole season, and I feel actually fairly confident in it. I had, if you recall, Jacob Sanderson on a draft stream, and we talked kind of strategy and upside and all that stuff for quite a while. And it's one of those things where talking to other smart people can be so helpful that I knew that I knew this, right? It was actually like the Gabe Davis thesis when everyone kept saying you can't draft Gabe, right, because of XYZ. My whole thesis was his floor is pretty high. He's like a small loss player. And so maybe Mike Evans wasn't a small loss, but he's probably a fairly big loss this year, regular season wise. But his weekly ceiling and his role in a good offense is such that like I can't leave my portfolio without this guy. And Gabe was 3 rounds cheaper, so I was and the Bills are better than the Bucks and blah blah blah. So my argument for someone like Gabe, the argument for lots of other people, Javonte, is the upside was so crazy, especially in any one given week, right? Gabe Davis did this last year. Gabe, Evans, Chase, Kamara, there's only a handful of these guys that have even done this in any single one week. So those kinds of archetypes are who you need to target. And you need to identify those archetypes first. Before ADP, throw that shit out the window. You like why Allen Robinson and Brandon Cooks and Keenan Allen were not good picks in my opinion for me and how I play this game is because there's not a universe, there's not a metaverse in which they can do what Mike Evans just did. Not possible.
Right.
Just can't do it. Allen Robinson. I don't care that Allen Robinson was on the Rams. He's the wide receiver. He cannot do. He doesn't have that role on the Rams offense, even if he was still good, whatever. Brandon Cooks cannot do that, right? Keenan Allen cannot do that. They can accumulate a bunch of catches and have a good week. That's great. That's not how we win best ball, right? Jamar Chase last year is how you win. Gabe Davis in the playoff best ball contest is how you win. And Mike Evans this week is how you win. And Mike Evans was a guy who I singled out. I fell into this trap. Everybody did. And we said, second round Mike Evans? What? Like, we treated it like our regular fantasy football league with our home buddies. I would, you don't care about having Mike Evans in your home league because the team who drafted Mike Evans in the second round got dusted off, right? Because you had AJ Brown. But in best ball, you can't, in my opinion, completely X out the archetypes of players that have that kind of a weekly ceiling. Now, you're not always going to be right about that weekly ceiling, right? The Rams went to shambles, blah, blah, blah. Shit happens. But you can't completely, you start your process with the players that are the archetypes that can do what Mike Evans just did. Now, cost adjust for all the other stuff. And you say, oh, Jesus Christ, Mike Evans is fancy Gabe Davis. I don't need to spend a second round pick on that a lot. But you can't just say, nope, no Mike Evans ever, right? Because he can do this. And so would you have if we drafted 5% Mike Evans, would we have gotten anybody through? Probably not. But right, we talked about a long time ago, like, look at all those. I don't mean to do this because you had them both on your finals team. Like, look at all those Dalvin teams and look at those Najee teams and look at those whatever. Those Andrews teams look. I would like to have my Andrews teams back. Put those on Mike Evans, right? You just take a handful, and then, like you said, then I'm going to have the structure. I'm going to have whatever, and I have my share. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But starting with the archetype and kind of the weekly ceiling and the general seasonal ceiling, I think is the whole thing here. And that's the difference between best ball. And it's hard for people to wrap their head around because you're like, Mike Evans can't pay off a second round ADP. I'm like, well, he just did. In best ball, he just did. It doesn't matter. The rest of the shit doesn't matter. What he did for the first 12 weeks, 13 weeks, 14, it really doesn't matter. And that sounds crazy, but it's the truth. This game is different. And even I feel like I talk about it every day for a fucking living. And I don't feel like I encapsulated it in my process like I should have.
But the flip side is just because you don't fall into that trap. And I was just checking my percentage on Mike Evans for the season. I was at 10% Mike Evans, which is
good for you. That's
decent. Doesn't mean I got him through, but at least I had the chance at him. Right. So like, I wasn't anti Evans, but I wasn't like going out of my way to draft him. If he was there and it made sense, I was taking him. Mm-hmm. But again, it's shots on goal with guys that we want to get there. Great comment by Hacker in the chat. He said, good on Rob to listen to his criticism. He's talking a lot less today. It was for the other podcast, but we got the greatest review ever over the course of 2022, where on the podcast review, they wrote, they talk too much. And it's a podcast. I don't know what they're looking for there.
Let's go silent. A moment of silence for. Hold on. Now. This is reviews of our podcast.
No, it was on Hometown Ghost Stories, but it was just my favorite.
Someone
review.
said on Hometown Ghost Stories, review the podcast, and said they talk too much.
Yeah.
That's almost as good. All right. Look, I'm not trying to dunk on people, but we have some really good comments on our podcast as well. And I just wanted to pull it up while we're talking about this. I posted this one on Twitter because maybe I was triggered that morning or something. The guy says, if you're looking to lose money, that's someone who loses money every best ball season, then this podcast is for you. First of all, what's really funny about that is that, look, I have a lot of personal flaws. And no offense, I'm not trying to be rude. We all do. You're human just like I am. The one thing I have successfully done is make money at best ball. Like, I've done a lot of other bad shit and given a lot of bad advice, but the one thing you can't say is that I've lost money at best ball. It's like, dude, I'm easily trollable. How could you fuck this up? How could you possibly fuck up this troll and pick the one thing that that you can't dunk on me for? And this one is absolutely legendary. Sorry, Bartleby, but not really. Reviewing the podcast. Not really a podcast. This is meant to be watched on YouTube. We are on YouTube. We just repurposed them for podcasts. As a podcast, this is not. I'm reading this for Bartleby. So, the audio listeners
Mhm.
can understand. I cannot say if these guys are good or bad. I can say the podcast is meaningless because I don't see a draft board and I have no idea who they pick. Sir, you are listening to an audio only podcast. What podcast shows you a fucking draft board? It's not. I'm not gonna. We did. I think we did that. Didn't you do that the one time after this comment? You read like every pick in the whole draft, trolling this guy.
I did that.
But yeah, people are hilarious with the comments.
Bartleby the cat, if you go through like all of our friends' podcasts and stuff, he leaves a 1-star review on everybody's stuff.
Really?
Yeah, I think the only one that was spared a 1-star was Pete. I think he might have got a 2-star from Bartleby the cat.
Well, Pete, you can't see Pete's draft boards on the audio podcast either. What the fuck?
I know, right? Yeah, so I love those. I have another one I'll share with you at some point when I find it, but people crack me up. It kills me. Anyways, the Mike Evans thing, we went over it. I think your point is spot on. We need to be going through and maybe just take a day where you take the draft board as it currently stands and just highlight and X out players in terms of like who's capable of doing this, like for you round by round, right? And go off of that and where you think it matters more. Obviously, I think it matters more in the early rounds. You're drafting for upside way more so in the early rounds than you are in like round 11. So that's something that we need to be looking at when we start firing these drafts up again. In like 3 weeks.
Yeah, the first tournament's coming once these playoff tournaments are done.
Yeah,
2 weeks or whatever it is.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a great discussion. I think it's a good thing to self-reflect on this stuff and like find what we were doing wrong. Maybe one of the things I was doing wrong, even though I had 10% Evans, was maybe when I do take my player stands, maybe I don't take them so early and I do flatten that exposure slightly over guys that I like in the first 2 rounds, and I really hammer guys that I like more in the mid to late rounds. That's something I need to look at because Javonte Williams, as much as I liked him as a pick, 20-something% Javonte Williams probably tanked me, and I advanced more teams than most. I had like a 28% advance rate. Imagine if I wasn't drafting 24% Javonte Williams. I get a few more teams through. So, but I could be saying the flip side of that. I could be dunking on everybody right now because clearly Melvin Gordon wasn't going to be it behind him if he doesn't get hurt. And even with a bad offense, I still think he has a pretty good year. So, I mean, it's, football is such a game of like yo-yoing and every game matters. And it's a crazy, crazy sport.
I mean, it's impossible to even like truly explain this format of fantasy football, like the best ball tournaments specifically with these randomized pods and the 4 uncorrelated tournaments, all the cookie cutter stuff that people will say. It's almost impossible to explain it because we're sitting here saying I hated Mike Evans coming into the year. He's like the antithesis of a player that I like to draft, certainly in the second round. He's a fine real life NFL wide receiver. He's not right. He was going next to AJ Brown and Tyreek Hill, and even like Debo is a much better real life football player than Mike Evans. Mike Evans is good, obviously. He has had a good career, but at this point, he's aging. Like he's aging out.
Mm-hmm.
He's aging out of like the star wide receiver group, and we kind of saw that this year. Just another ho hum decent year for Mike Evans. I was much lower on the Bucks than market. And so that led me, Chris Godwin's my guy and he was much cheaper and I didn't even really draft him. Obviously I wasn't really drafting Lenny. I wasn't drafting Brady. So I will say about Brady on the flip side, I don't really have any regrets about Brady. And I don't have a lot of regrets about like the in a vacuum take of Mike Evans. My regret and takeaway is what I talked about, that Mike Evans, I don't think we can get so honed in on the names and the traditional way in which we evaluate players, right? Mike Evans is, I told you these AirPods are freaking killing me. Mike Evans is a weekly, crazy high ceiling player. he's really expensive. So, okay, like, I don't know what the requisite percent I should have drafted Mike Evans on, but it shouldn't have been 0 if I was going to draft, right? We drafted Gabe and MVS and, all these other weekly high upside wide receivers for cheaper. We should also draft the second round guy that's super, super, super fancy Gabe Davis, right? Like, he's fancy version Gabe Davis. He's Rodeo Drive Gabe Davis. And I took 0. It's like, you were on the right path here. That's the frustrating part. It's like, you were on the right path here. You should just have like 4 to 5%, because AJ Brown also has that ceiling, right? And Tyreek also has that ceiling, etc. But I took a complete stand against that player that symbolizes kind of the weekly ceiling that we look for. It's the whole company is called Spike Week. He's a Spike Week type player, and I took a stand against him. Like, the X out players are like those dusty aging running backs that don't really have that ceiling, or Najee. Like Mixon was that guy for me, etc. I know he had the one big game, but and then like Cooks, Keenan Allen, Allen Robinson, right? Those kind of guys. Like, you've talked about Jacoby Myers. I'm trying to think of just some other guys off the top of my head. Those are the guys where it's like, dude, if you have 0 of them, who cares? They're not going to kill you. But I just don't think I should be doing the 0 of those kind of archetypes, because I still was ingrained a little bit in how we analyze fantasy football as you draft in your 12-team league, right? And you're just trying to take down your buddies in your 12-team league.
Do you think age had a lot to do with it with Mike Evans? Because everyone that was in on Gabe Davis was in on Mike Williams, right? So like, they were compared to as like sort of the same type of player. But the people that liked Mike Evans are the opposite of us, or the guys that like to draft running backs a lot. So it's kind of weird that that's where Mike Evans ended up going, like how he ended up flipping for both sides to a degree. So I don't know. I think maybe that might be one of the things. But next year, again, definitely going to be reevaluating my process on players, specifically in the early rounds, first, second, third round. I'm going to still fade players. I'm still going to get some leverage on players that I think are better. But once I get to the point where I'm never clicking on a name, I'll be going back to that name to make sure that, am I missing something? And maybe we're not. Maybe we're not missing something. So I think that kind of puts a cap on the Mike Davis talk. While Erik is figuring out his audio, I'll go through some of my teams that I have left, and then I want to kind of start talking about people in the chat. I've seen some people post some stuff there. I don't have any major sweats. In the puppy one, I'm in 43rd right now. I still have Devin Singletary to go. All he has to do to actually score points is beat Ramondre 6.1. So he could get me up there. If he gets a 20-point game, we get up into the $2,000 range at the moment. Again, the game tonight is Bengals Bills, so a lot of shifting could be done there. It is crazy. The guy in first place has 184 points. The guy in second has 145. And the guy in second, I don't think, has anyone to go. So it's like, in order for someone to beat this guy, he is shout out to N Bushinger 01. He has the Brady, Mike Evans stack with a DJ Moore bring back with Austin Eckler. So he kind of just like dunked on everybody with the nuts. Like, that's how he ended up getting there. So yeah, 184 points for this guy. Josh Jacobs was his second running back, carried him through the season. Interesting build. He started with Eckler, came back with Evans. I mean, clearly knew what he was doing because he has Godwin. He actually has the Brady double with the DJ Moore bring back. Completely correlated for week 17, picked the right game, and is just like dunking on everybody right now with the correlated Carolina Bucks game.
And on the week 17 thing, I actually think some people will still get mad about week 17 conversation and stuff like that. So I actually think this week proved the point of what week 17 is about. It's not about, no one in their right mind said, I got to go target the Bucks-Panthers game. And no one in their right mind said, I got to go reach, right? I got to go reach for Evans. I got to go reach for Godwin. I got to reach for DJ Moore. I got to reach for Tom Brady. What? No one said that. Like, if anyone was saying go target week 17 for the games that are the best, you would never have landed on that on that game. It was Baker Mayfield on the Panthers, right? A lot of people don't even like DJ Moore. The Bucks are fine. But it actually was like the reason why, okay, you landed Evans. Now you get to that, right? DJ Moore was in this tier of wide receivers, kind of in the Gabe-ish range, right? Waddle, DJ Moore, Gabe Davis, those guys. It's like, how do you pick between them? I don't know. They all look the same. So who do you pick? Well, you took Mike Evans. So if they're all in the same tier for you, you take DJ Moore on that team, right? If you took AJ Brown instead of Mike Evans, you take somebody else at that spot.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you have to take somebody else. If DJ Moore's your best guy, that's fine. But like you could take DJ Moore on AJ Brown teams, of course. But the correlation aspect is the final tiebreaker for these things. It's like, okay, now you get to the Godwin spot, right? In the 5th round or whatever, depending upon when you were drafting. Are you taking Godwin? Or are you taking Brandon Cooks? Well, I'm going to take Godwin instead of that guy because he correlates with my team, right? It's just this constant tiebreaker. And then you get to that quarterback tier with Brady. You break the tie with Brady over Stafford or whatever, right? The correlation is just this constant tiebreaker for that draft. No one is saying go draft the Bucks and make sure you get DJ Moore and blah, blah, blah. But it was such a perfect example of like, who knows what game's going to go off? Did I expect? No, if I expected Bucks Panthers, I would have been loading up on them in DFS. I didn't play any of them in DFS. No one expected this game to be the total blow up, but that's why you build the team kind of as it goes, right? Your whole team, you just are decision points at every single one. And I thought this was a good example of the whole week 17 thing. People are going to fuck it up. People are already like probably going to be disagreeing about it today, tomorrow, this week. But I actually think it was like the perfect example of the entire point of everything we've said about week 17.
Yeah, I think that nails it. Like this team nails that exactly. And we see a question in the chat that's like, what about the random Zaya Osborne to get through round 1? And what I'll tell you about this guy's team that's got the 184 points, not only does he not have Zay Jones, he doesn't have KJ Osborne on this team.
Jesus.
How the hell he got this team through?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, because his running backs are Eckler, Jacobs, who Jacobs has been bad in the playoffs until yesterday.
At least Eckler's been good. Yeah. So he's used his score every time.
Devin Singletary, who's been good. So it's been Eckler Singletary for him because he's got Darrell Henderson and Tyrion Davis Price.
Yeah. So he just used Eckler
and
Singletary through the whole playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, then he had Mike Evans, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, Chris Godwin, Christian Watson, Devontae Parker, Robbie Anderson. So again, Robbie Anderson was correlated for this week 17 matchup. Donovan People-Jones, who's been fine. And he went 3 tight ends with Hawkinson, Logan Thomas, and CJ Uzomah. You look at this team and you're like, how the hell did this make the finals? To be honest, right?
Hawk definitely helped. Hawkinson definitely helped.
Kirk Cousins helped.
Yep.
As well. And he didn't even theoretically stack Kirk Cousins. He just grabbed Cousins as a one-off, and I bet you his plan was to grab Osborne, and he got sniped on him or something.
Honestly,
like that.
Forgot Hawkinson got traded during that. I was like, oh, well, he has Cousins to Hawkinson. You're like, well, hey, dummy. I know it's been a long time since the offseason, but Hawkinson was not on Kirk Cousins' team.
And that was kind of the problem with Cousins in the draft season. If you didn't have Jefferson, and if you didn't already have Thielen, like. Osborne was the one guy to pair him with. I know people were on Irv Smith. I wasn't so much on Irv Smith this year. So if you grabbed Cousins without anyone else, you had to try to grab Osborne, and you'd lose out on him a lot of the times. So, yeah, I mean, like he correlated for week 17. Clearly was a person that knew what they were doing. They had the Robbie Anderson as well, just in case. And he gets this team through is the point. Maybe he had some pod luck. Maybe if he was in some of the other pods, he doesn't get through, right? But he got it through. And he got it through, and he had the guy, he had the Brady Evans stack, which he needed. And he's just absolutely dunking on everybody by 40 points right now.
Yeah,
now, I mean, tonight could change things, but.
Yeah, but doubt it changes it to the extent of his lead, but I mean, you never know, I guess. If there's a game that could do it, I guess it's probably this one. But even Corain was saying last night, and I'm sure he'll probably say it again tonight, like he barely got this team in. He only got one team into the finals, and this team barely snuck in. It only got second in the regular season, right? So 2 out of 12 teams advance in the regular season. It didn't win. So it's not like it blew away the field. I mean, it was Brady and Tua. Tua was fine, right? And Kittle and Gesicki at tight end. It's like Kittle seems good now, which is again another difference in best ball is look at what Kittle has done for this stretch run. He leads since Brock Purdy took over, Kittle leads the NFL in receiving touchdowns. So at tight end, at how bad tight end. And it also happened to coincide with Kelsey kind of died. Kelsey has kind of died the last month and Kittle has come on in the last month. So it's been a really big, among other tight ends, but Kittle has been huge. Gesicki hasn't done shit in basically, he had one good week really all season. Tua, he'd been pretty hit or miss since the really hot start. Brady's been awful. Like, how did he get this team through? No one really, no one really knows. But that's just how this game goes. He built a structurally sound team. He did correlate week 7. He did correlate week 17, and he obviously correlated he doesn't have Evans, but he has Brady, Godwin, DJ Moore. So like, he built a well-built team, and then you just pray to the gods. I know it's hard to wrap your brain around, right? Because like when you say things like do the right things during draft season on all your teams and let the fantasy gods, and the variance gods either play out in your favor or not play out in your favor. It's really hard to humans aren't good at saying like, I have no control over this, but you really do. Once the team is drafted, you have zero control. And that's Pat's team. It's not meant to be a negative thing at all. It's a really well drafted team. Mm-hmm. It's not the team that Pat ever would have picked. If you went through all Pat's teams, even the ones that just advanced to the playoffs, this would be very low on the total poll. I guarantee you. It'd be super low on the total poll. But that's not that's the reason why this game is so crazy, and that's why we stream so many fucking drafts and we talk about all this stuff, because we're always constantly trying to look under every rock to find something new that can potentially give us an edge.
My best team left for the year, I guarantee if I were able to go through and rank all of the teams that I drafted, playoffs or not, this Najee Dalvin Cook team would have been bottom 5%. Like for sure. Because I would have been, I would have asked myself what I was thinking. I'd want to go back to my headspace. Was I just like, maybe I guaranteed what I was thinking is like, I have drafted so much of the normal stuff. I'm just going to take a Cook Najee team because I have just not touched them. Right. Yep. Like that had to be what it was. And that's the only thing I can come up with. And I'm like, well, if it's what you need, at least I'll have the one contrarian take to the rest of my takes or something like that. And it's clearly what I had to have been doing. But if you had gave me the rankings, I guarantee it would have been towards the bottom. I didn't like to start Najee, Dalvin Cook. Clearly, they're like two of my lowest owned players from the first round, like easily. So yeah, I think like we start looking at stuff like that, but then that's the teams you get through sometimes. And it's not like you can trade them out. And even if it's with players you don't like, the point is still drafting them within the proper structures of how you take them, right? Yeah. Like not giving up and just being like, screw it. So once I go Najee Dalvin, I have to make sure that it's like a 5 RB build or something like that. Or like drafting the right types of running backs around them, however I want to do it. Like building within that structure, like not firing off stupid picks just because I took guys I'm not used to taking. Building
I've seen a
around
bunch
properly.
I'm sorry. There's a bunch of comments I got to get to in the chat here.
Let's do it.
Nothing like a robust RB team winning it all to stick it to the 0 RB bros. A robust RB team is not going to win it all. There's not a robust RB team in contention. There is an RB start. There's not a robust RB team in contention. So nothing is being stuck to the 0 RB bros. The best part about what Pat did on his team is he takes the 0 RB principles and puts them into a team like an RB start. The thing that the RB bros miss in all of the 0 RB conversation is not that 0 RB people are actually out, like not interested in the early running backs. You think I didn't like Christian McCaffrey? Everybody likes fucking Christian McCaffrey. You know what I mean? Saquon Barkley was one of my highest owned players. Like he drafted Saquon. Like no one who is a zero RB bro is actually anti-running back. It is a structural thing, and what Pat is so good at and why he hopefully wins tonight and why he deserves to win is because he has taken the types of principles that can win in fantasy from a structural perspective and putting them into every single structure and building, like I said, he built an awesome team. Those are the teams that deserve to win. That's not a robust RB team, like not even close, actually. Then there was another one that when you were talking about, your only team that got through was Dalvin and Najee, and he was asking, what does that teach you? If your lowest owned players are the ones on the team that you got the furthest, is there anything that we can learn from? And I would say, not really. That's we just talked about the Mike Evans thing. I don't have any regrets about thinking Mike Evans in the second round was way overpriced. I don't think is getting a Dalvin, like Dalvin and Najee were bad.
Yeah.
If anything, the player is there anything you can learn from it? Is that keep drafting good structures like you did. You built just like Pat did. Now you didn't have Eckler, right? And Saquon and Saquon was a little better than Najee, but like you did the same thing as Pat did. You built a really well-structured team around that start that you just so happened to start with. Those two guys weren't even good. At least Pat happened to hit on two guys who were good for most of the season, although Saquon really kind of tailed off. If you are a good structural drafter, you can build a good team at any time, and you mix in the right types of players around those guys, right? So I draft those two running backs. That's what Pat did. That's what you did. Now I'm banking on those two dudes. They got to be studs because I drafted them in the first 2 rounds, right? This is where the robust bros miss the point a lot of the times. They keep going back to that early running back. Well, it's like you already filled your running back spots. I know you have a flex, and I had some like 3 RB teams that worked, whatever. But what do you need to do after you just spent? Another thing Pat has talked about, calling these snake drafts more like auction drafts. Assign a dollar figure to that first, right? If there's a $200 budget on your auction, you just spent $60 on Austin Eckler. Okay. Yep. Now you just spent $40 on Saquon Barkley, and that keeps trickling down. Okay. You just spent half your budget on 2 running backs. Do you really need to go back to the running back well? No. And then if you don't need to go back to the running back well, what do you need to do? Right. He said, well, he's an elite tight end guy. He took George Kittle. That didn't actually work out very well for almost the entire regular season, right? He actually didn't draft an elite quarterback, which is a thing that people, talked about a lot during the season. But he built a well-structured team with upside wide receivers, right? Where did he fill? He knew he needed volume of wide receivers, elite tight ends, etc. And so you just build structure. That the lesson isn't anything to do with the fact that you happen to get that weird kind of, what you would think was a weird team through. That's just variance. That's just, unless you were if we were just wrong about Najee, then Felix would be here on the show with us. We'd be sweating it out if we were just wrong about Najee's upside. But you were right about Dalvin and Najee. You are just good at drafting structurally sound teams, and so you just so happen to get that one through. It really didn't have anything to do with Dalvin and Najee.
Yeah, I mean, and it's similar to what Pat did, right? I take Najee, I take Dalvin, and then my next 2 running backs are Devin Singletary and Ramondre Stevenson. So it was a far gap between taking my next running back, and then the only other one I took was Dearness Johnson. And I double stacked Jared Goff at the time because Hawkinson's on this team, right? So it was Hawkinson, DJ Chark. Cole Kmet was the bring back, which probably isn't perfect, but we weren't big on a lot of the Chicago guys. My other fine. But I don't know if you want to stack your tight ends for week 17. Would be like, right. I mean, it worked out because Hawkinson gets traded, right? But it was the only Chicago bring back I could find, really, at that
didn't want Uncle Valus.
Right. So we're limited in that spot. But yeah, so I take Jalen Hurts, I take Jared Goff, and I just load up on wide receivers, but I'm also doing some correlation with those wide receivers. I have, Christian Watson for the Dalvin Cook bring back and stuff like that. So it was similar to the approach that Corain did, where I was still correlating for week 17. I wasn't going overboard to do it. And structurally, when I started 2 running backs, I waited until round 9, 10, 11, like 10 probably before I took the next one. And I made sure that I solidified the onesie positions. He went with a 3 quarterback build, but I got Hurts and Devonta Smith. I don't think anyone's going to complain about that. And I held off on Jared Goff. So like, yeah, it's not going nuts. It's not taking those 2 running backs and then being like, oh, well, Leonard Fournette fell to the 3rd. I guess I got to take him. And then I guess I'll take Cam Akers in the 4th as well. And then fuck it, I'll take 2 more running backs. And then you're just absolutely stuck at that point, right? Like, how are you salvaging let's just say a 5 out of 6 first round running back team? You're just not. So, and there's people that are doing this. That's why we bring it up. People in our chat probably aren't doing it for the most part. Like, maybe I'll dick around and do one of those robust teams here and there, but probably never in BBM and probably only in a lower buy-in thing just to see if I can make a build that I like. Spoiler alert, I never make a team like that I like.
You're right.
Right? Like it just never makes sense. So yeah, I mean, like I still like to do the exercises to make sure I'm not missing something, but the takeaway, the long-winded takeaway from both of us is you can draft players that you don't like and everything goes down to structure and how you're drafting your teams out. And that is our edge versus the field.
Yeah. And I think that there is player evaluation. There's an edge. I actually feel like more strong about that now than I did before, but I think it's different than how the traditional fantasy football community is valuing it, right? What we have seen is the never-ending shitting on someone like Mike Evans, right? Mike, and I agree that in a vacuum, Mike Evans in the 2nd round, given everything else, right? I think Hacker was the one that posted the comment earlier that ADP only matters in a sense that who you're passing up on to take that player. It really doesn't matter in any other, like people love to be like, you can't take that guy in the 2nd round, or you can't take that guy in the 6th round or whatever. It's like, well, what does that even mean? Like, I mean, sure, I can take him in the 6th round, but who am I giving up to take him in the 6th round? And you're like, well, this guy or that guy, or, that's where it comes into, and why Mike Evans was bad in the 2nd round. If like Mike Evans was your highest exposure player in the 2nd round, right? You drafted 30% 2nd round Mike Evans. Why, in my opinion, that's not good process is because of the players you had to pass up on to take 30, right? 30, and the players you basically have to be underweight on. Saquon, AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, and that did not go well for you, right? Even with 30% of him, you may not have got a team to the playoffs because so many of your teams got dusted off. But again, back to that original thing is the player takes are not the I'm going to predict this breakout, right? It's always, or this guy's going to fall off the cliff, or, and I'm guilty of that. I'm as guilty of that as anyone is. But the take is this game is not right. Again, Mike Evans was maybe the worst pick in your 12-team home league with your college buddies. If you took him in the 2nd round, you lost. You might have got last. It's bad. I guess the guys who got hurt are worse, right? Pitts, Javonte, whatever. That's worse. But other than that, yeah, he was the worst. He was like that, almost the Allen Robinson of last year. He was terrible. He barely helped you. And we carry that over to best ball. But this shit is so different. Yeah. Like, throw away we need to retrain our brains to how we think about drafting in best ball versus your traditional home, even like FFPC and stuff like that's still all so different than this. And so the lesson is all of that stuff. The lesson to me, like, structure is the ante to the game. That hasn't changed. If you can't draft good structurally sound teams, you're going to pay the rake more often than not. And that is what it is. That's just, that's like part one. That's best ball 101. But like best ball 301 is some of this other stuff that those are where the lessons lie, right? The best ball 3. We're not into like super, super advanced best ball course type stuff yet. The industry isn't big enough, but we're definitely getting into the real lessons that we can learn. And I think Evans is a good lesson, but Evans isn't a good lesson in like, should you have drafted 25% Mike Evans? Because the answer is still probably no. That sounds crazy because he just won people millions of dollars. But like the answer is still probably you shouldn't have drafted him that much. But how much should you draft players like him? Right? How like I think he's a terrible pick based on XYZ, but I know he could do this. I know he can put up 50 in any given week. And if that happens in the fantasy playoffs, he's huge for me, right? Like, how do you weigh that? Do you just full fade and say, please God, fuck it, don't do it in the playoffs? Or do you say, like, I'm going to dedicate 5%, 10%, whatever? You know, I don't know what the right answer is, but those are the conversations we should have, not like the stuff we do for traditional season long.
Well, let me ask you this, because I think we might have had this conversation in the offseason, but with a different player. I don't know if you remember this particularly, but we were going over some of our exposures at one point, maybe halfway through the season, maybe a little before that. And at the point in time, I had 0% CeeDee Lamb.
Oh, yeah.
Because I didn't dislike CeeDee Lamb. I disliked where he was going in the draft. And I found myself taking guys on both sides of him and leaving
like
drafts
Mike Evans.
without him. Like Mike Evans. And just not taking him. And at that point in time, I was nervous about it. I was like, I don't like where he's going. I think he's mispriced, but guess what? The price doesn't matter because the price is the price, right? The price is the price at the end of the day. You walk into the grocery store, you're like, I don't like that eggs are, God, I don't know, grocery store prices.
Jesus, all eggs is funny that you bring that up. Every time I go back there, $1 more for a carton of eggs. Like, what the fuck is going on? CeeDee Lamb is the eggs of the best ball market.
So like, I was nervous about it. I'm like, I'm missing out on this guy that has that 30, 40 point upside, especially, you know, in week 17, he could be the guy you need. And I knew that in my mind. And so I course corrected it and I got him up to, I think, 8% by the end of the season because I made it a point to start taking him. So I do think that like we can already be in on that process, but we need to make sure we're doing it with players, you know, A to Z rather than just finding the one. But like, even if you find the one, I consider it a win. Like, yeah, maybe CeeDee Lamb didn't do much for me on the teams that I drafted him on. Actually, he did crush on the
He's been really good. He's been really good for like the last month or so. Yeah.
So like you were fine with him if you got him through. So yeah, I mean, he could have made me some money. I'd have to like really go double check everything, but the process got there. It's like, oh, I see something I'm doing wrong. Self-evaluating. We talk about this all the time.
Yep.
Self-evaluate what you were doing. I found what could be a leak in my game. I thought maybe in the beginning, I don't remember, I thought he was going to drop in price, but he never did. And once he doesn't, it's like, okay, Mike Evans is holding fast in the second round. Well, now I got to make my decision. It's July, right? I mean, we need to establish what we're going to do with him. And we need to be doing it with more players probably in the future. Look at our exposures to players. And it can go both ways too, because now that I look back on it, we've talked about this, not being in on Derrick Henry, not being in on Najee, not being in on Dalvin Cook. Why did I have any exposure almost to that extent? Like, and here's where I could be fixing some of those other problems by adjusting some of these other things that I was doing that I didn't like.
I'm glad you brought up those guys because there's a constant, like many things in the fantasy football landscape, people, and particularly best ball. And there will be, I can't wait for the amount of time someone tweets about like, my advantage is structure in best ball. I don't have player takes, right? I can't wait till we do that shit again in June, because that actually couldn't be more wrong. But where I think really, as we've outlined here a lot, the player take edges is more in who to X out than it is in who to target, right? And now I have right. The two people that Kareem went pretty heavy, actually. They didn't end up being the guys he needed, but like he drafted 50% Rashad White. Oddly enough, he wasn't willing to take some stands, but a lot of the winners have taken stands. If you disagree with them, that is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I think the player takes are probably the most important thing. But I really think, like I said, it is figuring out who to target and who not to target. And Mike Evans would be like, again, Mike Evans versus Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's probably a better real life football player still in this. And he's on an offense that frankly I was more excited about. But he is just not the archetype of a player that can like really, especially in half point, maybe on DraftKings. Maybe on DraftKings he's different. On drafters, he's different. On underdog, Keenan is just not the guy to me.
He's an X easy.
Yeah, you X him out, but Mike Evans is not an X out on underdog, right? And so like it's those kind of player takes. No one said in that whole conversation, did anyone say take a stand on Mike Evans? Did anyone say take a stand on anybody? No, but that's a player take. That's important. That's like maybe the most like knowing not to, I drafted 0 fucking Brandon Cooks this year. I drafted 0 Allen Robinson this year. People will remember the fact, and they should, because I'm an idiot, for drafting so much Kyle Pitts and Trey Lance and Javonte Williams and all of that. But like why I even got teams as far as I did, why I made money this year is because of the player takes. It just so happened to be not the player takes on the guys I really like loved more than the field. It was on the guys to X out, right? Mm-hmm. So why does Gabe Davis not having a good year actually low-key help me? It's because all the Gabe Davis teams were in lieu of any Brandon Cooks, any Allen Robinson, right? Any of the dusty guys that went there, like even like Terry McLaurin. Who gives a shit if I didn't draft Terry McLaurin? He didn't do anything, so like the player takes absolutely matter. And I think, hopefully Kerrane wins, but Kerrane is a player take guy, maybe not to the extent that say Felix and Liam were last year, but one of his edges is player takes, but player takes can go both ways, right? Full fade versus taking stands on guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, I think I said it earlier, but it might just be on where you do that in the draft. I think Xing guys out earlier makes more sense than taking stands earlier, maybe. And that's not to say that I won't take a stand on a guy early in the draft next year. If I see something that I like, I probably can't help myself. But I think Xing guys out earlier is what makes more sense in that aspect.
I agree. So for anyone that hasn't watched us much before, we don't this is never scripted. We literally both show up a couple of minutes before we go live and we bullshit about something that probably has nothing to do with what we were going to talk about. And then we just go live and we're like, let's just talk about, whatever becomes relevant or whatever the chat wants to talk about. I did not expect us to talk about all the, kind of lessons from the season. But it's really good conversation. It's going to be a lot of good clips that we can use from that. I do want to talk a little bit about tonight and kind of the best ball finals real quick to kind of wrap up, because it is this. I'm framing it mostly through the BBM lens. There's so many tournaments, so I'm not trying to not pay attention to those. It's just obviously with Kerrane being in first and it being a $2 million top prize, it's it's very top of mind. But it is crazy to me, that this game is on Monday night. It's almost like Underdog, with their ad spend. They were sending some checks to Roger to be like, can you put Bills Bengals on Monday night, please? The amount of traffic we're going to get to our website on Monday night is going to be crazy. But Kerrane doesn't have Mike Evans, and is there's a few teams I'm very terrified of for him personally, looking at the list, but he's also still kind of the favorite, I think, which is crazy because this game tonight is everybody's, that's the game of the week this week, Bills Bengals. There should be offensive. They're two good defenses. So I think people are underrating that a little bit, but still, even with the good defensive play, there should be offensive fireworks with these two teams. And a lot of the teams chasing first place need a lot of points, not even just Kerrane in other tournaments. You need really big, like 25 half PPR points from some of these guys to chase down winners of tournaments, and that's he doesn't even have Mike Evans. It would be one thing if it was what is the original puppy you said that you were describing earlier, that guy just hit the stone cold nuts. So I get it why people need huge games to chase him down, but Kerrane has 161 points in a 500 man field, and people need 30 Jamar Chase points to catch him. It's a pretty crazy run out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it does feel like maybe Underdog paid some money because you see the absolute great thing they did on week 17 for the schedule, and then you look at how they're bungling the week 18 schedule right now, and you're just like, what are you doing, NFL? So I hope going forward the NFL does realize, like, not just for best ball, but for fantasy football in general, how big week 17 is. It is the big week of the season. It is championship games. Hopefully they have some schedule makers that are looking at like, oh, well, we need these two teams to play week 17. We should probably put them on Monday night because they're a big game, or this one on Sunday night because it's a gigantic game. So I hope that they can't be like, they have to be privy to it.
Well, it's money. If it were something that wasn't going to line their pockets, they wouldn't give a shit, I don't think. But like, dude, Bills Bengals on Monday night to win people like, not even just, we're talking best ball, which is obviously huge and only going to keep getting bigger. But like, this impacts any form of fantasy football. Having Bills Bengals on Monday night, they were going to get a lot of eyeballs anyway, but the amount of eyeballs that they can get on this shit is absolutely insane. And then it just incentivizes people to gamble more, right? You're like, I'm going to be watching the game. I'm probably going to throw a couple shekels on some things before tonight. It is ironic. I'm not trying to make this all about me. I could make a few. You were talking about I could make a few more bucks with XYZ. It's Gabe. Gabe is the guy that I need to have a big game. So I won't be rooting because I'm not going to be actively on stream rooting against Karain, but it is very funny that Gabe has a shitty year and he's on literally all my playoff teams or my finals teams, and would be the reason that I could make a few more bucks.
Yeah, I mean, I have a Burrow double stack where Burrow just has to pass Lawrence, and Jamar and T need to pass Garrett Wilson and Zay Jones to move up the ladder, but we're not going to sweat it. We're not going to. I think you're going to
move. I think you're going to move up. Let's just say that much.
Yeah, so we're not gonna sweat that because again, we are anti-sweating Chase and Higgins tonight. We do want Pat to win this because it's couldn't be a better guy. To be
comment exactly. I'll just leave it at that. I was going to say something mean about other people, but I'll just leave it at that. 212,000 views on Pat's tweet about sweating for the 2 milli tonight. Best ball about to go boom is the comment. And it's funny. He posts that and every relevant person in the fantasy football industry replied, Matthew Berry and everybody. So like the people are, it would actually low key is so big. Like I'm so excited. For Pat, because like you said, it's a really good person to have this opportunity, but also because selfishly, if someone like that wins and the Matthew Berrys of the world are publicizing it more, I mean, it's obviously good for us. We're talking about this year round, but like the people in the chat, the people playing, it's like, we want the people that follow Matthew Berry and read Matthew Berry to be in our drafts. Let's just say that much.
Yeah, that's been a surreal moment for me this year, is just interacting with Matthew Berry a few times via DM and stuff. Another great guy, honestly, just another really good person in the fantasy space. Karain's a great guy. And for me, because again, I got half of Karain's team tonight based on the draft that I dug up. So I hope that happens and I get $1 million, like 800,000 after taxes or something like that.
All right, 2 questions. In order to get your $800,000, who's the player? Set aside the actual like specific sweats that Pat has, like all the exact scenarios, but who's the player? I'm trying to think of the right way to frame this. Who's the player you're most afraid of? Who's the player you're most afraid of? And I don't mean just like, oh, Jamar Chase, duh. But like, who's the player you're most afraid of, like kind of, sneaking up there and having a big game?
Well, there's a guy that has the double stack or something like that, right? Has some, or maybe not a double, but
there's a Burrow, a Burrow T team that hasn't had any quarterback points yet. I believe it's an Evans team. That's why it has so many points. And T needs to score like Hackers, if you're listening, will remind me exactly what it is, like 6 or 7, something like that, like 7 points, and T's score will start counting, right? So if T scores a touchdown, his points are going to be already starting to count, and every Burrow point counts, and they're down by 36. So that's fucking terrifying, right? Like a big Burrow game, can get him close enough as it is, and then T. So, which I would not feel good fading T, T or Chase tonight. That's a big one. And then I'll just pull it up.
The one that Anthony has in the chat is scary too, where they got Singletary, Higgins, and Knox left, and I think they're, by reading this, they're 16.7 away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Can you see this?
Scary.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
This is about. So these are the one I just mentioned is not on here, and then. Shout out to, if you're watching, I apologize. I'm not trying to dunk on you. Shout out to all the people that are like 70 points back with like Devin Singletary and Dawson Knox. And they're like, you forgot this one. I'm like, motherfucker, you're not alive. You're not coming back from 70 with Isaiah McKenzie. Like, a Hacker was nice enough to put this poor fellow who needs a 28-point Isaiah McKenzie game on here. Like, we probably should have left that one off here. But anyway, so there.
Shout out to Hacker real quick, because putting this together is top-notch work.
Yeah, he's the man. We were talking about it yesterday, and yeah, he is the absolute man. So anyway, what is really nice about this, and what I like what he did, is on the right-hand side, you can kind of get a quick glimpse and just be like, okay, that's a Tyler Boyd team, right? That's this, that, or whatever. But like I said, don't have that one team that's a Burrow without any quarterback points yet on here, but there's the one that you said that, and this one is also, this made me laugh. I don't think that's how Texas work. But Singletary starts scoring at 7.3, which is terrifying. T starts scoring at 6, which is terrifying. Knox starts scoring at 7.7 is not the worst. But when you combine all that with only being down by 16.7, whoo, buddy, that's when it gets real sweaty, because like this dude's got outs to so much stuff from all these guys.
Yeah, that one seems like the real scary one. The Burrow Boyd Knox one seems like it's closer, but it's going to be tougher for it to
start scoring
anything. So that's
and
not as
Boyd
scary.
Is so much work. Like T and Chase can go nuts. It's really hard for. I'm not saying he can't. Of course he can, but Boyd projects like Chase projects for like half point PPR, like probably like, I don't have it up, 15, 16 points. I don't know. I'm throwing something at the wall. Boyd probably projects for like 8. So like it's tough for him to get there.
That Allen Chase team's slightly scary. Being it's not fully scary, but Allen could put up 35. Chase could put up 28 to 30.
I think the Allen part of it is the scariest, because he, like you said, it's really hard for Chase, even like in this matchup. We'd have to remember the Bills defense is competent, so like you're not gonna, they just don't really give up big plays like that, so you're not gonna get like that Evans game. But I mean, he could score, let's just say 30 at a peak. And so you really have to fade Allen going for 35 or whatever is the big fade.
Yeah, I think that the 3 teams that look super viable is those 2, and maybe the 30 from Chase, because although it's tough, we know that Chase is capable of putting up a 30-point game. So like those are the ones that look the scariest, I would say.
Yeah.
Out of all these.
And that's the thing. Any one of them individually, I went through them and like my heart was racing this morning. It was a good way to wake up. Is like any individual one of these, outside of, like you said, that Burrow T team is really scary. That one, what was it? Singletary T Knox team is really scary. A couple others that are like pretty scary, but it's just the fact that this game is so fucking popular. Like fading last night's game, you're like, yes, there's a couple teams that can hurt me, but it's like, I don't care that much. I don't care that much. This is like half the people in this tournament have guys in this game. It's like, James Cook breaks a long touchdown on the first drive, and you're like, fuck me. Now James Cook is live for 25 points or whatever, and that wasn't something you were even probably sweating before, right? And now, like Sunday Funday right here, needs 19.2 from Cook. Is Cook probable to get 19.2? Not a fucking chance. But you're like, in this game, you just get something fluky like that, and then there's other Cook teams, right? It's this trickle-down effect. It's like, it's brutal, dude. This game is just the worst possible thing to have and he doesn't have any defense, right? He has no defense against any of these players because he's all done.
The one that we missed is the LP 8317, who's got Burrow, Mixon, Davis, and Higgins left.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
17 from Burrow before he starts counting, almost 14 from Mixon before he starts counting. He's 37 points down, but the wide receiver spots are only 3.9 and 3.4, and you got Gabe Davis and T. Higgins.
Yep.
You don't need Burrow to do much. You get 25 out of Burrow. That's 8. That brings it down to 29. You get 16 out of Mixon. That's, 27. And then 27 divided by 2 is just like getting, a couple, I don't know, 16-point games out of Davis and Higgins or something like that, or
right,
or less, or, some variation of that. That might actually be the scariest one, to be completely honest.
Because I think Pat and I sent this to Pat so he could look at it this morning, and I think that was the one he actually brought up. And it's like, I'm glad you brought that one up, where he said like this. He's like, I'm terrified of that team, and it's because it's 4 of the best 6 players and 4 of the best set, if we include Josh Allen, 4 of the best 7 players in the game from like that. I mean, we know what Burrow, Mixon, Gabe, and T can do in any single, like they could blow the shit out of this game, and 3 of them are on right kind of quasi. Mixon and Burrow aren't super correlated, but I mean, Mixon could catch a touchdown pass, and that would be fucking awful, right? Mm-hmm. And then obviously T is this, anything T catches is from Burrow. It's like, and then it's correlated for this game. So it's like, okay, if Burrow throws a touchdown to Mixon and a touchdown to T, well, now Gabe's in a better spot, right? It's the DJ Moore on the other side of the Brady type thing. And it's like, you don't want that, even though it's probably 3rd in probability out of the, again, that Knox T Singletary team and the just straight up Burrow and T team. Probably, I think I'd put it, very rough off the dome math, probably 3rd probability wise, but it's not far behind, and it's got the most juice. Like those dudes got some serious juice. Like, I mean, Gabe could catch a 60-yard touchdown on the first drive, and you're like, oh fuck, like instantly you're like, oh fuck, this is bad. Like technically Gabe or T could like get them almost all the way there, right? They score 25. They score 25 or something.
I think the scary part is just every player's live in it. We look at that Singletary Davis Higgins team. Singletary needs 22.3 before he even starts counting. So I almost just X him out completely. And you're looking at Gabe and Higgins need to get a combination of 20 above the 5.4 and 13. So Higgins could score 13 and Davis could still put up 20 and the guy doesn't get there.
Correct.
Right? So I don't know. I think that Burrow team might be the one I'm scared of the absolute most. But again, Jamar Chase could put up 30 and it just doesn't matter. You're just dusted off at that point. Right. Mm-hmm. So
crazy.
Yeah. Would you want to know, like, so if you're in this spot, if you were in this spot ending the night last night, and I know Corinne does a show, so things were going to get thrown at him doing the live stream, but like if you had the chance, like after you got done with the 4:00 games yesterday, would you have wanted to know, or would you have been like, you know what? I'm not watching Sunday Night Football. I'm not watching Monday Night Football. I'm waking up Tuesday and seeing how this goes. Or are you like me and probably couldn't stop looking at it?
I would not be able to stop looking at it, but I will tell not the same level, because Pat's a much higher probability winner than I was, but it's maybe 5 years ago at the DraftKings NFL Live Final. And after the early games, it's a very, very similar situation to Pat. I was in first place after the early games. Back then, it was like 2 milli up top or something like that. So I got the screenshots somewhere back, many in the depths of my iCloud or whatever. I'm in first. Wife's with me. We're down in Florida, and I know it. I'm like 2% to hold. So like I said, Pat was way, way, way higher than I was. I was a dog to fall. I finished like 13th or something like that. And so clearly you could see there was a lot of chalk in the afternoon or whatever. Julian fucking Edelman, your goddamn Patriots were chalk in that game. So that sucked. Le'Veon Bell was out for the Steelers. This is how long ago this was.
Oh, yeah.
God damn it. They had a fullback that was like a Jalen Samuels. Remember Jalen Samuels?
Oh my God. Yeah. I would have never pulled that name though. He
was chalk as like Le'Veon's out. He's 4K on DraftKings, so I faded him. I faded the whole game. So anyway, sitting in first, we're down in Florida. So I sitting at home here where I am now, no fucking chance. Wouldn't be able to put the phone down. I would watch the games. I'd be tilting my absolute face off.
Yeah.
But we left the live final and went down to the beach and like walked around the beach, and we were just like, I'm like, I don't want to sit here and watch not 9 figures, 7 figures just like fall out of my pockets in real time. And everyone else, they were all chalky, and watch everyone else cheer around me. That's kind of what Pat's going through too, is everybody needs guys from this game. It's like, anyway, shout out to everybody in the chat. We love you. We're rooting for you. But like, everybody's like, I need 20 points from T. It's like, I need a big Josh Allen game. I need that, because this game's so relevant for fantasy.
Right,
That's what Pat's doing. That's what so I was like, I can't fucking sit here and watch this. We went down to a bar on the beach, hanging out with locals, and they're like, yo, you're from St. Louis, so what are you doing here? And I start telling them. They're like, what the fuck are you doing sitting here right now? Like, you're winning $2 million. and I'm like, yeah, because I can't stand to watch it. So I think my answer is, now living here, being older at home, I would not be able to look away, but I have quasi gone through this, and I couldn't sit and watch. I absolutely could not sit and watch it.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. I know that I would say I'd want to walk away from it and not look at it, but I know how I am on Sundays when I'm just sweating out a top 10 finish in some fucking stupid DFS tournament or something. Had one in like the double spy this week that I just couldn't stop taking my eyes off of.
Yep.
Like, and the money just isn't even close to the same. Not only it's because I think for us, like to put into a smaller bracket, but if any of us were to win it, it doesn't just give us $2 million, which is the best part. We are set. I think Davis brought this up on the stream last night. We're set in our field for life. We will probably always have a job at that point, most likely, as long as we don't squander it, right? Like, just we're completely stupid. But it's a resume thing that just cannot be matched by many people at all. So, yeah, I think it's just a double sweat. Not that Pat has any concern of that. Like, dude is good at his job.
Yeah, exactly. So. The question was, did you end up winning, or where did you end up at that live final? I think it was 13th, somewhere in the top 10-ish, top 15-ish in that. Long time ago. Jalen Samuels was the chalkiest player on a DFS slate, so that tells you about how long ago that was. And totally agree with Hacker. Let's wrap on this comment. I play for the sweat, because two parts. One, we've seen a lot of comments about changing, people wanting to change the structure of, in particular, say, Underdog or DraftKings tournaments with the pods, right? The random pods and all that kind of stuff, and people wanting to change that for fairness or whatever the fuck they want to call it. And we've talked a little bit about that on the last show, or second to last show that we did. And I think this comment is it. Yeah. We don't even really have to say that much more. The reason this game is set up the way that it is, the reason this game is so popular, the reason that next year these prize pools are going to look small, which sounds absurd, but the reason that we're going to get more contests and more formats and probably more sites, right? We only really have 3 or 4 right now. This is just the beginning. There's going to be more competitors even coming into this. The reason all this is blowing up is this. The sweat is unmatched in the format that it is right now. I get it. You feel shitty when Pat's team gets through and wins $2 billion and your Mike Evans team got dusted off in the finals, lost by 2 points. It sucks. Trust me. I've been in this space for almost a decade now. Those things happen. It sucks. We're all human. But the reason why this game is so awesome is this structure. And it's because of the sweat is insane. It is absolutely insane. And I hope they never fucking change it. I don't care what all the people complaining on Twitter talk about. It's completely because of this sweat. I mean, look at what Pat's show last night, Pat's show tonight, everything we just talked about for the last hour and 15 minutes wouldn't exist if we didn't have this current format. And so, and the only other thing I was going to say is that I've talked to a lot of people over the course of the last 2 days. I myself was super tilted yesterday. My best team that I thought was like I went through every team in the DraftKings $25 because I legitimately thought my team was like, even without Jalen Hurts, it was one of the best. I had a Hurts Lawrence team. Mm-hmm. I thought it was one of the best projected teams in the $25, a 54-man field. I'm going to finish like fifth to last in that. Eagles sucked. Hurts didn't play. Lawrence sucked. Jaguars took out their starters, right? Just everything. Justin Jefferson was on that team. Like, pick a thing that went wrong this week. It was on those teams. That's how it goes. But the whole thing is, look, sometimes you ran bad. Sometimes you didn't. The sweat was awesome. And we'll have it again. We're going to be drafting playoff best ball teams starting tomorrow. I'm going to be streaming some playoff best ball drafts. It's never ending. Like Rob mentioned, we're going to have probably a big board or whatever the hell they want to call their first 2023 tournament in a couple of weeks. We play for that sweat, and it's disappointing when it doesn't run out for you. But like this Karain run out could be you next year. You never know. It's just the whole game is the fun of the sweat.
We didn't even talk about Jefferson busting. The guy that got like so many people.
First round pick was the highest owned player in every final. That's absurd.
Which is crazy. And he gets everybody there. He's owned at like some absurd clip in BBM at every single tournament. And he just absolutely bricks.
2 points.
Just absolutely bricks. Assaults an official.
Oh yeah, I forgot he bowed the official in the back of the dome.
I mean, like, that was insanity to watch that, because you would think like no matter what he was going to get his. I thought he was going to get his no matter what. Like maybe, he has one of his lower scoring, but not what he did. Like no one thought it was going to be that bad. So it was just crazy, like to see all the people that have him, and like a lot of people were fading Jefferson, and not a lot of people that were fading Jefferson. It just helped them increase their standing. It was just like, so we just see stuff. That's what it just goes to the point you're making. This format is great. I saw a comment from Al earlier in the chat where like one of the guys that's in the top 10 or something like that edged him out by 2 points just to make it to the last week. And now he's going to win thousands and thousands of dollars, barely making it through to the finals. But he got the team through. And again, it could be pod luck. Maybe that was one of the lower scoring pods. Maybe it was one of the higher scoring pods. And this isn't us kissing underdogs' ass either, by the way, because we've had our like run-ins with them on things that we don't like. I mean, you have to give fair critique to the sites you're operating on, but I think they nail the playoff format. I think it makes it the most fun.
Beautiful.
It's fun to sweat it and look at all these things and just see like what teams you're advancing and ride the highs of getting teams through that shouldn't get there, deal with the lows of teams you're like, fuck, any other pod, I get this team through. It's part of the sweat. And that goes to Hacker's point, part of the sweat. It's just fun to sweat the teams all the way up until week 17. And it gets more fun. Like you don't like season long. A lot of people lose interest. I run a season long where we pay out the weekly top scorer. And I still had people this week that weren't in the finals that weren't updating their team. Yeah. Like you could have got $50 back. Like best ball, we are sweating all the way through. Like, and more and more and more as we go through. So It's more
sorry, just that I'm glad you brought that example up, and why this is God's game. Basketball is fantasy football's version of God's game. I'm in leagues that do the exact same thing that you said. Partway through every single season, no matter how committed your group is, you're going to have people getting lax in managing their fantasy football season-long team. No matter what, you'll say it every year. Well, we're going to put in a weekly high score because that will incentivize dude. When you're 2-12, do you think you give a fuck about that $50? No, you're like, get this season over. I'm never looking at that team again. Like, right. I don't care. Yeah. I do it. I only play kind of in dynasty leagues now because that at least piques my interest. I can tank for something, right? Bijan, we're tanking for Bijan, but like you can't incentivize people enough. The team winning the DraftKings Millie Maker in best ball right now, drafted. It's a Russell Wilson team. He did not use Brady's score. He did not use Daniel Jones' score. Russell Wilson was his quarterback. Trevor Lawrence was his second quarterback. And he drafted 2 more quarterbacks.
Yep.
Jordan Love and Jacoby Brissett. The team is absurd. And, this isn't meant as a slight on that person, but I'm saying you can win. You're never dead. The sweat never dies in this, right? There's a team again in the top 3 to 5, maybe, I don't know, that was missing 8 players this week. So imagine you're like, damn it, I got this team to the finals. I got to fill out a starting roster of 8, and I only got 12 guys and one quarterback, Daniel Jones. Your only quarterback's Daniel Jones. You're like, next thing you know, he's in second for $500K or whatever. It's like this game, you can't beat it.
I just want to point out that my dog is very stressed out about Karain's chances tonight, as you can see by his stance on the couch right now.
He lays exactly like mine do. It is absolutely amazing. Yeah, just full spread eagle.
Yeah, just got to do it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we talked about everything we wanted to talk about tonight, but I think we did get some real interesting points put out there. Things to look at for next year, conversations we're going to be having again next year. I love that there is still so much to learn about best ball as we go forward.
Yep.
So is there anything else you wanted to hit on?
Nope. Let's get out of here. And I'm sure you're all very aware of this, Ship Chasing is going live around kickoff time. I am going to join them at least for a little while to mostly just sit back and watch Kareem sweat over a computer screen, because that'll be very funny. But highly recommend tuning in there. Root for Kareem or root for yourself if you're one of these teams that we just showed that are live on here. We weren't trying to not root for you. We're rooting for anybody that's sweating one of these out and part of our crazy sicko community. Only little housekeeping is definitely digging into. I wanted to get into the playoff best ball stuff either over the weekend or today. The programming schedule has gotten a little wrench thrown into it with the results from yesterday, and obviously with Kareem having a sweat there, we're trying to be smartest about how we schedule our shows. So tomorrow we're going to kick back off, play some playoff best ball content, and then be kind of starting to recap, obviously, the 2022 regular season, and then after the next couple of weeks, we'll get through the playoff best ball stuff, and we'll get into a crazy fun off season. But tons more playoff best ball content coming. I promise. We were just trying to get through kind of week 17 here, so that'll start tomorrow.
And go check out my Twitter and watch the video of myself and Pat Kareem drafting this $2 million potential winning team. If you haven't seen it yet, please go check it out. Anyway, Rob's dog is clearly getting antsy to get off the couch, so we'll get out of here. Double hands now. I love it. God, that's literally my dogs. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the game tonight. If you have any sweats, please enjoy it. Have some fun, and we will see you